Hi folks, welcome to the A Minute to Midnight Show. Tony again coming to you from New Zealand, and with me on the show today I have Ralph Strean. Now Ralph's been on the show a couple of times, but it's several years since you were last on here, Ralph, so it's great to be talking to you again.
Yeah, likewise, Tony. It's funny. I need to make movies more frequently so we have more reasons to get together.
Absolutely, yeah. And so you're like the director and producer of a new film. Maybe you can tell our listeners what your company is, and then we can talk about the film.
Yeah, Sevenfold Films. It's my studio / ministry. I started it back in 2009. I made a movie that some of your listeners might already be familiar with. It's called Genesis Paradise Lost. And that came out in theaters in 2017 and I think early 18. And now I've got a movie called The Ark and the Darkness, and that's coming out to theaters actually next week, next Wednesday and Thursday in the United States.
Well, I have a copy that you sent me some years ago on Blu-ray, I think, or DVD of the older film, The Genesis Paradise Lost. And that was great, and I've enjoyed that film. But I'm going to say now, I'll tell the listeners, you sent me an advanced copy to watch of this new The Ark and the Darkness video, and I've watched the whole thing. And like this one, the other one was really good. This one's just brilliant. That's all I can say. It's a fantastic movie, and I highly recommend anybody to watch it if possible. So.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. That's awesome. You know, it's funny because I've been asking people internally, hey, do you like one more than the other? And I get different reactions. Most recently, somebody very close to me said that they liked Genesis just a hair more, but they were the only one. Everybody else has taken your position, which is they're just like, oh, this new film, this is it, you know? So, yeah, maybe I don't know if that's a testimony to me maybe be getting better as I'm doing this more or what, but I can certainly tell you I give God the glory because so many things happened making this film that it was just like God aligning everything for me. And when it would happen, it would just be like, oh, wow, I know that God is going to use this film because of the way that he's just making everything work, even right down to when my partner Dan from Genesis Apologetics, that's the other ministry who is helping me or helped me make the film. When we were first talking about the idea, I was actually debating if I wanted to do a movie just yet again after the last one. And my wife was outside with me while I was on the phone talking to him, and he was really pushing hard like, hey, let's do this. And all of a sudden there was a rainbow in the sky behind me. And my wife was like, look behind you. And there's this rainbow. And I was on the phone with Dan, and I said, well, it looks like this is what God wants me to do right now. So it's been pretty awesome. And to see the reactions and to hear, how much you enjoyed it is just so rewarding after all of that hard work. It takes 7 days a week work. It takes, working 16 hours a day, a lot of coordination, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. But it's amazing that we're finally here.
So when did you actually start working on it, and what was the motivation to choose this particular topic?
So it was about 2.5 years ago, which is a miracle in of itself. My first film, to give your audience some context, it took me about 7 years to make. Now, granted, it was in 3D, like actual glass is 3D, but still, it's amazing that God helped us to do it in about just a little over 2 years to make it. But the catalyst for it is real simple. If you surveyed the world right now, the biggest answer people would give you for why they reject the Bible, why they reject Jesus, is because science disproved the Bible. And what's so astonishing that so many people hold that view is that it flies in the face of the fact that God left behind on the entire planet the greatest evidence ever to prove that the Bible is true, and that is the flood. And so, as much as I have moved on in so many areas of my studies biblically, soteriology, eschatology, one thing that I can't get away from is the fact that no matter how deep I'm going in the Word, I have to remember that most people are not even able to get to the Word because they believe that evolution's true. They believe that there is no God. They were educated from the time they're in kindergarten, middle school, all the way up to high school, and they're told that it's just an archaic book. Maybe they'll offer you a little bit of lip service, but science basically disproved it. And here we are with this flood evidence all over the world, screaming the exact opposite. And I think the most infuriating thing in my experience of making this film has been to see science be the establishments intentionally thwarting, hiding, covering up evidence because it completely goes against their paradigm. It completely goes against the status quo for them. And so that's really what was the impetus behind me and Dan deciding, you know what, we're going to not just make a movie about the flood. We're going to try to make just the greatest movie that you could possibly make to, show the world that the Bible's true. There was a worldwide flood. There was a great judgment, and there's a judgment coming that when Jesus Christ comes back, and you better get saved, so that you're going to fare well in the next judgment that comes.
Yeah, and to be honest, I think your film totally destroys evolution. I think it absolutely obliterates the whole theory of evolution. What I'm going to do now, Ralph, is I will drop the trailer in here so people can watch the short trailer for the movie, and then we'll come back to the discussion. So it's trailer time.
Ever since 2020, the world has irrevocably changed. With every month passing, seeming to get stranger and stranger. It's scary to think what the future holds as we march forward together, facing a certain inevitability, a prophetic time that can only be described as biblical.
But there was an ancient world.
The fall of man.
That's why God sent the flood.
There was a judgment that happened.
It changed the world profoundly.
There is yet a future judgment coming.
It'll be just as it was in the days of Noah. In the last days, the end times.
They will be surprised when Jesus comes.
The Ark and the Darkness, in theaters March 20th and 21st only.
Okay, so folks, that is the trailer for the coming movie. So Ralph, tell people again when they can see it.
So in the United States, it's going to be out this next Wednesday and Thursday. That's March 20th and 21st only. It's a limited engagement. It costs a lot of money to be able to get a movie out to theaters. So that was really pretty much all we could do. But we've tried to stack enough theaters and enough time slots there that everybody who wants to should be able to go.
And I'm sad that I can't be there to watch it in the theater.
Well, you cheated.
I mean,
You
but
got to
I've
cheat.
seen it on my monitors. I was telling you off here, I've got 3 computer monitors. It's like move it to this one and look, and which is the biggest monitor, and I've watched it. But a theater view would be a whole different ball
I
game.
haven't even seen it in the theaters, so that'll be a neat experience for me too. But really, some of the best news that I can share with everybody listening is don't be too disappointed, because if you're not in the United States, the good news is we're going to do something that we've actually, frankly, been told by a lot of our, not a lot, some of our peers not to do, which is we're going to release the film for free online. But that's going to still be about 5 or 6 months from now. So if you want to see the film, you definitely want to go see it in theaters. This is your opportunity. Otherwise, you're going to wait almost a half a year before you can see it. But we really believe from the beginning that like with my other film, who I produced that with some different people. And a lot of people write me in and they say, you have this amazing movie. Why don't you put it out for free? And I try to tell them, I'm not the one who makes the decision regarding that film, but I do get to make the decision on this film, and my new partner and he couldn't agree with me more. We don't want to sit on this. We want to release it to the world. So coming soon, after it runs through its circuits, we're going to bring it to the world for free on the internet.
That sounds awesome. So yeah, like I say, I've seen it at least, and I would highly recommend people go to the theaters and watch it if at all possible. And obviously, for those of us that are not in America, well, we're going to have to wait a little longer for the free version of it, but that'll be worth the wait. So just going back to what you were saying before about, we were talking about it destroying evolution and the whole thing about making it the best flood movie, I mean, there is a lot in there. You have a lot of people interviewed that are obviously experts, and I mean, I kind of get through that and go, how can the establishment not see this stuff? Well, the obvious reason is because they don't want to see it, because that means there's an accountability to a God, and that means the whole Bible, if you prove one bit, it proves the whole thing pretty much. And so they don't want that because, but anyway, what are your thoughts?
I'll even take it further than that, and this might sound a little bit conspiratorial to say, but I think that your audience is probably better equipped to handle what I'm about to share with you than most audiences are. I'm going to go one step further and say that I stopped believing that this was just a bunch of innocent people brainwashed who are just sticking to their worldview, and so they're trying to doctor up the obvious evidence a little bit. I stopped believing that, and what I have now come to believe is that I believe that there's a satanic cabal that is in charge of much of the evil going on in the world, and I think that a lot of these institutions, let's call them, are well informed. They know what's going on, and it is their goal to mislead us. And when I share that with some people, they think, oh, that's a little bit out there. And I think to myself, okay, so hold on a minute. You would agree with me that people have been lied to about wars. They've been lied to in politics. They've been lied to in health with what happened in 2020. They've been lied to in all these other places. But you draw the line at education. You draw the line, that there's not a globalized initiative to repress creationism. I mean, if you're Satan, that's going to be one of the biggest goals that you have, is get them young, get them to look. You have so many battles won if they don't even show up to the Bible. You don't even have to battle them on half the other stuff if they're not even going there in the first place. So I think it's deliberate. Like, I'll give you an example that we put in the movie. This will frustrate you to hear, but and almost all these secular museums, they will not take evidence of other animals, modern animals, and put them in exhibits with dinosaurs, even though those dinosaur bones were found with these modern day animals. And the two examples that we give in the film are turtles were found with T-Rexes, along with ducks, along with boa constrictors. So you're finding these modern day animals mixed in with these burial sites, with these dinosaurs, but they deliberately don't put them together because that flies in the face of their evolutionary theory. Right? Now, you have to ask yourself, what kind of person curating this museum would do such a thing? Like, what are they so scared of, right? Why are they, or why wouldn't they at the very least scratch their own head and say, well, golly, guys, I mean, don't we think this is a step too far? That tells me that there are power structures. There is an incredible amount of control happening here as to what the public is allowed to understand.
Well, I'll tell you one thing that I want to mention is the trees. Okay. The trees, the upright trees going through layers of strata.
Oh, yeah, okay.
That's impossible under the any other model that I can tell.
Yeah. So exactly, polystrate trees, I think that's going to be one that's going to just smack the audience right upside the head, because you never hear about that. Yeah. You never hear about that. I think that 9 out of 10 people watching this film, probably 10 out of 10 people watching the film, are going to feel like, nobody's even suggested such a thing. Yeah. And it's not just trees that they find that are growing up straight through multiple layers that are supposed to be millions of years old. It's all sorts of things. So there's polystrate fossils that can be other things like bones and whatnot. It just completely refutes evolution theory, or the fact that you've got sea creatures buried in all the rock layers. That right there by itself should just be a case closed. That's it. Let's all go home. We don't even have to watch the rest of the movie, because if you're finding sea creatures mixed in with all of the bones around the world that are supposed to be millions of years old, how did they get there? And of course, evolutionists, they have come up with their explanations. But one of the things that I think the film does so well, what we intended to do with it, and what I think it does do so well, is that it takes you through all of these different clear-cut case proofs, and by the time you get to the end of it, like you said, Tony, you just can't walk away thinking anything else other than there was a worldwide flood, exactly like the Bible said. And if you do, it's because you've spiritually shut yourself off to that. And unfortunately, there's nothing we can do for people like that other than pray and ask the Holy Spirit to intervene. But, hopefully the good news is a lot of people are curious. A lot of people do, when they see, hear about this movie, they're like, what's that? And they are on the fence on some of these things. And hopefully this movie is just going to absolutely, just wallop them with so much truth that there's no way that they get to the end without completely recontemplating everything. I think one of the funnest ones for me was showing people something that I don't think that they've really put together, and that is that why are there so many fossils on the Earth? Because you're trained to think, you've been almost brainwashed and indoctrinated to think that that's perfectly normal, right? I mean, in the past, you've got fossilized animals everywhere. Well, ask yourself this question. If there wasn't some super event to cause that, why is it that today things aren't fossilizing? Why is it today that when an animal dies, he breaks down and turns back to dust? Right? Why is it today that when trees die in the forest, they decay and they become soil and they get completely recycled back in? Why is it that everything you look at on the earth that's natural, right, breaks back down to the earth? And yet You've got trillions and trillions, an unfathomable, countable number of fossils around the world. What could cause so many fossils? What causes the fossilization, the petrification of all of this different organic material? Only a worldwide flood can explain why that would happen. Why you would have the saturation of the water, the mineral content in the water, right? As these things are floating down and the sediments are coming down and covering them underwater, and then the water dries up and leaves behind these mineralized and now dried out and fossilized, petrified fossils, trillions of them all over the place, right? I don't think people think about that. They just assume that fossils everywhere is just what happens, even though they've never seen that happen in their time. And that tells you there was a flood.
The other thing, see, I agree, but you mentioned, it is mentioned in the film, not by you specifically, but about soft tissue found in dinosaur bones that are supposed to be billions of years old, which is impossible scientifically, and you don't hear about that. It's all hushed up.
Nope. All hushed up. It's completely hushed up. It's so humiliating. I think that when people are in hell in the future, I'm sad to say, they're not just going to be tormented. They're going to be humiliated because Satan has been able to trick so many people with the stupidest thing. It's almost embarrassing. And one of them is that you've got Bill Nye, for example, who famously said that you can't do science through the Christian worldview. You're so stupid in your Christian thinking that you shouldn't even be in any field of science. You're not going to contribute anything to them because your entire worldview, your entire paradigm is so goofy that you can't even accomplish anything. Well, let me give you a perfect example of how that is the complete and polar opposite to what we actually experience with soft tissue. So when I was doing the research, I was flabbergasted at the admissions that a lot of these paleontologists were making when they were saying, you know what? When Mary Schweitzer cracked open, that bone, well, she didn't technically crack it open, she dissolved it, but when she discovered soft tissue inside a dinosaur bone in the early 2000s, why didn't any of the other ones even think to do that? Even think to look in there? It's because their entire paradigm was already, no, it can't, it's impossible. There can't be soft tissue. These are 65 million years old. They're petrified bones, meaning that there's no organic material left in them. They've completely petrified out, right? Because with that amount of time, it's not possible for you to have any biomaterial. One of the points that the film points out is that collagen, for example, can only go 100,000 years tops. Now, some of them really are grasping at straws and they try to say, well, it could go 1,000,000 years. No, it can't. Even secular, non-believing scientists are saying 100,000 years is the most, and that's pushing it. Really, the consensus is 10, 20, 30,000 years tops that this biomaterial could last, like collagen, for example. Well, do the math. If they're saying that it was 65 million years ago that these creatures went extinct, but the material they find in them couldn't last longer than 30,000 years, let's say 100,000 years, just to be, just to give that to them. Well, it's obviously impossible. It's thousands of times shorter than the time frame that it would have to be, to survive so long. And mind you, what they're finding are pretty decent samples. I mean, even at 30,000 years, it's so broken down that, you'd have such bad samples, but they're finding stuff that's so fresh that when they crack it open, you can smell the rot. Okay? So go back to what Bill Nye said. Here he is saying that in the Christian paradigm, you can't even get science done. Well, for 100 years, paleontologists could have found soft tissue in bones, but they didn't even look because of their worldview. Talk about not getting science done because of what your preconceived notions are. So it's amazing to make something like this, and it's also infuriating to see the faulty science And the fact, like the Bible says, professing themselves wise, they became fools, and they worshipped the creature rather than the creator, who is blessed forever. Amen. Right? I mean, that's
Absolutely.
exactly what we see today. They are worshiping the creature. They say, we came from rocks, we came from monkeys, right? These are created things, and that has become their god. So that's another example of the Bible perfectly predicting what the last days would look like.
Absolutely, that's totally true. I'm going to drop another little piece of the trailer video into the video here now, people, so you can see a little wee bit more of the film.
The Lord God had made a beautiful world in which everything was once very good. But when the first man broke God's command, man's domain was plunged into sin and death, which only grew worse with the progression of time. And it was not just man who had been corrupted, but all under man's dominion. Animals became carnivores and turned on each other and man. Where once the earth had been filled with God's goodness, now was filled with the celebration of evil and endless violence. The Ark and the Darkness, in theaters March 20th and 21st only.
So, Ralph, it's brilliant, and you mentioned the fact that the scientific community as a whole, they are just not interested in this stuff. So then, like high school kids and whoever else, university, they're brainwashed with the theory that they want. And let's just reiterate, it's a theory of evolution. It's not a fact, no matter how much they say. It's still a theory of evolution, which is a ridiculous one. But kids and young people are being indoctrinated with it. So I want to say, look, send your kids to watch this film. Your kids that are at high school or university, they should see this, because it should give them more than just food for thought, but at least the very least food for thought. They won't be able to go away totally ignorant. They'll have to be willfully ignorant, or they'll have to examine the facts.
It's good for them to know early on that there are fighting worldviews. It's good for them to know that, because so many of us were sent through the entire school system just trusting that everything that we were being taught had already been figured out. These people wouldn't lie to us. And look, I'm not saying that our teachers are all lying to us. Some of them are unwitting pawns in Satan's scheme. But sadly, so many of these teachers are peddling this garbage, and it's good for the kids to know that not only is evolution not true, but it'll help them at an early age to be able to understand that there's a battle going on. And I think that's very important.
People should definitely go see it, and then when it comes out for free, then there'll be even more audience that you can send it out to. So yeah. What else would?
Yeah, and coming out to support us is good too, guys. I know that the Temptations just wait 5-6 months for us to put it out for free, and that's great if you do. I truly hope that you're blessed, but it's really great for us because we put so much time and so much money into it, and this is a way for us to be able to, get paid back, be able to go do more things, and it also, when it climbs up the top of the charts in the theaters, like it's doing with the ticket sales right now, it's doing phenomenally well. That's really great for us because we're able to take that as sort of a bargaining chip to be able to get it onto secular platforms. Like, for example, with my last film, Netflix won't even look at a lot of projects, that are indie projects like this. But if you've done so well at the theaters, all of a sudden they're talking to you, and they actually made us an offer on the last film. I wanted so badly to be able to put it on Netflix and get it out in front of 200 million people who've never heard this before, but we weren't able to do that, unfortunately. But this time we might be able to do something like that. So there's a lot of great benefits that we have if you guys can come see it now.
That sounds good. So, okay, Ralph, have you got any last thoughts that you'd like to get across to people before I let you go?
I would say it's in the vein of what I was just saying a moment ago is, so many Christians these days are correctly saying, why isn't there more Christian content? And why isn't there biblically accurate content? Like you've got The Chosen, which I've got problems with, when you're putting words in the mouth of Jesus, when you're doing things that aren't exactly, scriptural. For us, we're trying so hard to be able to, to present something that's completely biblically accurate. And so I hope that you guys can come support us, because you're saying, hey, I wish we had more of this. And we're saying, okay, here's some. And so now we need you guys to show up and show everybody that more of this type of content needs to be made. And hopefully lots of people get saved, and maybe even some of your family members can get saved too.
That would be awesome, yeah. And I can imagine there'll be anger and frustration and all that from the other side of the things that don't want this information out there.
Yes. We're anticipating that battle coming up big time. Yeah. Last time they review bombed my movie, they went on to IMDb, and I think it had like an 8.5, and they shot it straight down to 5 out of 10, so that now when people see it on IMDb, they're like, oh, that must be a garbage film, just because a bunch of atheists got together and did that. So we're expecting some more of that, but that's just, the fiery darts, and, it just shows us that we're on the right track. We're over the target.
It is very interesting that is the general tactic of these types of people in all of those movements. It's to shout everyone else down, not to listen, not to try and be objective, but their reaction is always to shout down, punch people, do whatever they can to stop the stuff getting out that contradicts them.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's right. And that we get a lot of that on Facebook and other places too. But I'll tell your audience one last thing. When you bring families and friends to see movies like this that are just packed full of evidence, one mistake you might make is thinking that, anybody who watches this is just going to walk away and say, oh, well, there you go. I mean, right? Like, hey, Uncle Joe, aren't you a Christian now? Like, you saw the movie. I mean, there it is. There's all the evidence for you. The Holy Spirit is who saves, and all we can do is just give the message that God has put on our heart to give them. But God's not going to interfere with their free will. They have to choose to listen. They have to choose to open their hearts. So all we can do is our best. We've created the message. Maybe you can bring them to hear it, and pray for them, and just pray that God will open their hearts. But that's definitely one of the biggest things that we're looking forward to, is the testimonials. We can't wait for this thing to go online for free on YouTube and other places, and see what God does with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so Ralph, are there any websites that people can look up?
Right now, the only place we're pointing people to is noahsflood.com, no apostrophe. So it's just noahsflood.com. And you can immediately click on the Get Tickets button if you're in the United States, and that'll take you to a portal where you can put in your area and find the theaters nearest you. So that's it, noahsflood.com.
Awesome. Well, Ralph, it's been just fantastic to be discussing this with you and have you on the show again after a few years away. So, keep in touch, and we'll be definitely, really looking to see what happens with this and praying for a huge success for it.
Yeah, thank you, brother. And I think you're going to like some of the other stuff I'm going to do too. I'm actually going to move a little bit away from creationism for a while. I feel like I've done everything God wanted me to do there. And I'm going to get into some eschatological video series that I'm going to do. So I think we're going to have a lot more to talk about here soon.
Sounds good, Ralph. Awesome. Cheers, man.
All right, brother. Talk to you next time.
Cheers. Thanks. And also, folks, remember to visit us and subscribe to us at aminutemidnight.com. It's our website where we have everything, all our videos and articles and so forth that can be found there at our website. And also, we do run 100% by donations, and they're always greatly appreciated. And I want to say thank you to the people that do donate. And if anyone else wants to help us out that way, you can do so at aminutemidnight.com. and the music used in the show I've written, played and recorded. God bless. God willing, we'll be back with another episode in a few days' time.